Today we're looking back at Ahmed Sékou Touré, the man who shaped Guinea's destiny. He stood up to France and chose freedom, making him a symbol of African independence. Touré inspired a generation, but his story is far from simple. The liberator who defied colonial rule also became a ruler known for paranoia and repression. Was he a hero or a tyrant? The answer depends on who you ask. Understanding Touré is key to understanding post-colonial Africa's struggles and hopes. From postal clerk to president for life, his journey is one of ambition, ideology, and power. He played Cold War superpowers against each other to keep Guinea sovereign. His dream of African socialism shaped a nation, for better and for worse. Let's explore the life, legacy, and contradictions of Ahmed Sékou Touré. Join me as we uncover the many layers of this complex leader. Ahmed Sékou Touré was born in 1922 in Farana, French Guinea, into the Mandinka ethnic group. He was the great-grandson of Samurai Touré, the legendary anti-colonial warrior, a legacy that fueled his own ambitions. Raised in a rural Muslim community, he attended both Quranic and French colonial schools, gaining a unique perspective. His formal education ended early when he was expelled at 15 for leading a student protest. This act of defiance revealed his natural leadership and refusal to accept injustice. Forced to work, he joined the Colonial Postal Service, where his real education began. He became a voracious reader, drawn to Marx and Lenin, and learned firsthand about colonial inequality. His job connected him with workers across Guinea, exposing him to the realities of colonial rule. These experiences shaped his political vision and built the networks that would launch his career. Touré's early setbacks only strengthened his resolve. He was determined to fight for African dignity and independence. The seeds of revolution were sown in these formative years. Soon he would become a force the colonial powers could not ignore. The Postal Service was Touré's gateway to organized labor and political activism. In the 1940s, he co-founded the Post, Telegraph, and Telecommunications Workers Union, fighting for African workers' rights. His charisma and oratory made him a natural leader, quickly rising through the union ranks. By 1952, he led the Guinean branch of the powerful CGT, organizing massive strikes that shook the colonial system. The 76-day general strike of 1953 cemented his status as a national leader. Touré saw the fight for workers' rights as inseparable from the struggle for independence. He helped found the Democratic Party of Guinea, pushing for a complete break from France. Traveling the country, he built a grassroots movement that connected deeply with ordinary people. By the mid-1950s, he had taken control of the PDG, transforming it into a vehicle for nationalist ambitions. Elected to the French National Assembly and as mayor of Conakry, he gained influence at home and abroad. His union and political power merged, setting the stage for a showdown with colonial rule. Guinea was ready for a historic confrontation. The moment of decision was approaching. In 1958, French President Charles de Gaulle offered African colonies a stark choice: autonomy within a French community, or immediate total independence. De Gaulle expected compliance, but Touré stood firm. In a legendary speech, Touré declared, "We prefer poverty and liberty to riches and slavery." On September 28, 1958, Guinea voted overwhelmingly for independence, alone among France's colonies. France retaliated, withdrawing all aid and personnel, leaving Guinea isolated and stripped bare. Touré became Guinea's first president, facing a nation with no resources, no bureaucracy, and a hostile former colonial power. Despite the daunting odds, his defiance electrified Africa and inspired anti-colonial movements worldwide. Touré turned to the Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc for support, defining Guinea's Cold War alignment. The celebration of independence quickly gave way to the harsh realities of nation-building. Guinea's bold stand made it a symbol of African self-determination. But the cost of freedom was steep. Touré's leadership would now be tested as never before. The world was watching. Guinea's future hung in the balance. The era of colonial rule was over, but the struggle for true independence had just begun. As president, Touré built a centralized one-party state, merging the PDG with the machinery of government. His philosophy of communocracy, African socialism, prioritized collective will over individual rights. Party membership became essential for advancement. Opposition was not tolerated. Touré promoted authenticity, reviving indigenous culture and rejecting European influence. Guinea's music and arts flourished, but political control tightened. Touré's charisma masked growing paranoia. Dissent was met with surveillance and repression. The regime's security forces became infamous for brutality. Camp Boiro prison symbolized the terror. Thousands were tortured or executed without trial. In 1974, Touré was named president for life. Elections became meaningless. The dream of liberation gave way to a climate of fear. Poverty persisted, and liberty vanished for many. The man who promised freedom now ruled with absolute power. Guinea's hope had become its nightmare. Touré's early years saw real progress. Literacy rates soared, and women gained new rights. Schools were built in neglected rural areas, and forced marriages were banned. These reforms fostered national pride and modernization. But economic policies faltered. Nationalized industries were inefficient and corrupt. Forced collectivization devastated agriculture, and the currency collapsed. Guinea's natural wealth was squandered, benefiting the regime more than the people. Paranoia led to brutal purges, especially after the failed 1970 coup. Thousands were arrested, tortured, or executed. Intellectuals and minorities suffered most. Fear silenced dissent, and hundreds of thousands fled into exile. By the late 1970s, Guinea was impoverished and isolated. Touré began to seek Western investment, quietly admitting his socialist experiment had failed. But political repression remained absolute. The promise of independence had curdled into oppression. By the early 1980s, Touré was an aging statesman respected abroad, but feared at home. He chaired the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and prepared to host a major African summit. But his health was failing. In March 1984, he suffered a heart attack in Conakry. Lacking adequate medical care, he was flown to the U.S. for emergency treatment. Despite efforts, Touré died in Cleveland on March 26, 1984, at age 62. His death stunned Guinea. The Sili was gone. World leaders attended his funeral, reflecting his complex international legacy. For a moment, the nation mourned its founding father, but his sudden absence left a power vacuum. The regime he built collapsed almost overnight. Guinea stood on the brink of a new era. The strongman's rule ended as abruptly as it began. Touré's death triggered a swift military coup. Colonel Lansana Conté's junta ended PDG rule, freed political prisoners, and denounced past abuses. For many, it was liberation. For the Touré family, disaster. His wife André and son Mohamed were arrested, along with other relatives and officials. Some family members were executed. Others, like André, spent years in prison or exile. The system Touré built now turned against his own kin. The once powerful family was scattered and stripped of influence. Their fate mirrored Guinea's divided memory of Touré, hero to some, villain to others. The story of the Touré clan is a cautionary tale about the dangers of absolute power. Their downfall was as dramatic as their rise. The legacy of Ahmed Sékou Touré continued to haunt those he left behind. Today, Touré's legacy remains fiercely debated in Guinea and across Africa. For some, he is the hero who won independence and inspired a continent. For others, he is the architect of terror, remembered for Camp Boiro and the climate of fear. His economic policies failed, and his paranoia destroyed lives. Guinea's trauma remains unresolved. His portrait still hangs in Conakry, but his rule is a sensitive subject. Some recall his era with nostalgia for order and purpose. Others remember only brutality. Touré's story is a warning about the corrupting nature of power. He was both liberator and oppressor, a paradox at the heart of post-colonial Africa. His life forces us to ask, can freedom justify repression? How do we balance unity and dissent? Whether visionary or tyrant, Touré's impact is undeniable. His shadow still looms over Guinea, a nation forever shaped by the man who said no.